What was your life like as a little girl?
Excellent. I grew up in Montclair, and we had a really nice house. We weren't rich or anything like that, but we were very comfortable. I always knew that I always knew I was lucky. I always knew I had it good. I had it better than other kids did. And we had lots of freedom to go out and play, lots of independence, could do, many, many things on our own that you guys can't do nowadays. It was simpler. You didn't worry so much, you didn't worry about getting kidnapped and, things like that. So I had an absolutely great childhood.
What were some of the things you could do as a little kid that you said we couldn't do it now?
Well, I used to go, we used to take the bus. I'd go with a couple of girlfriends, and we'd take the bus and we'd go down to Newark to go shopping. Now, nowadays, people would think, oh my God, you're going to go to Newark and you're going to get mugged, or, and we went there all by ourselves, So lots of things like that. Lots of things you could do on your own. You used to go out and play all day long. You never saw your parents. They hardly even knew what you were doing, since there were no cell phones or anything. They didn't even know where you were. You said, oh, I'm out playing, and you came home for dinner, that kind of thing. So it was great. Lots and lots of freedom.
What were some of the ways you communicated with family or friends over long distances?
Pretty much letters and postcards, because you were worried about how much phone calls cost. So you didn't, you really thought about making a long distance phone call. You just didn't do it. And if somebody lived nearby, then you could call them. But because a lot of our cousins were far away and stuff, so really just by letters, that was about pretty much the only way. And then we saw them on holidays, like they would come to us or we would go to them long distances. So it was just, there wasn't as much communication as there is now, and it was lots and lots of letters, mostly letters.
How did the daily routine of women compare to that of a man's during adulthood?
It was different back then as a young adult. For women, things were very much like they had been in the 50s, where it was really traditional. The man went out and worked, the woman stayed home and took care of the kids. Many women had jobs, like my mother and Grandpa's mother. They stayed home with the kids. But then a whole trend came where women's libs started, and people started talking about, women have a right to have a career too, and people got involved with that, and I got involved with that, and I thought that was a good thing, and I decided that I really wanted to be independent. So I went back to school, and got a college degree, and then got my teaching degree and started teaching. So it was very different than what my parents had been like, for me.
What was it like going to college after you graduated high school?
Well, I went to college for a little while, and then I got married, and then I had children, and then after I had the children, I went back to college. So my college experience was different than most people's, because most of my college years I was commuting, living in Caldwell and commuting down to Montclair State, and I was only able to do that because my mother helped me, because she could help take care of the kids, like either pick them up from school, or Allison was really little, so she took care of the kids. So it probably took a little bit more effort to do that, because I had a lot more responsibilities, but I also was like really good in school. So people used to get mad at me because I would ruin the bell curve because my grades were good, and then their grades would suffer, because you're more serious when you're a little older, so you're not like partying and playing around so much. You're serious about what you're doing in school. So
how did having a child at the age of 19 affect your life?
It made it better. We had our kids really young, and because we did that, they finished school, they finished college really young, and we have been free and able to do a lot of things. Like a lot of people nowadays, they wait until they're really old to get married, and they do all their things independently at first, like traveling and stuff like that. We couldn't do that because we had nothing. We had no money. We didn't even have a car when we first got married. We had a bicycle. And so it took us a long time to, get jobs and get established. And then when our kids got out of college early, we were still really young. And then all of a sudden we started traveling and doing all this stuff. So it's been a blast. And we both agreed that it was great. We loved doing it that way. Not the way it is now, but for us it worked out great. Well, here's an example of ways that we saved money and things that we didn't have when we were first married. This is a painting I did of the administration building at the University of Notre Dame, where we lived when we were first married. So all the things, all the paintings that were on the walls, I did myself. I did upholstery, like I would make a slip cover for a coat. A couch, because we get the couch from the Salvation Army or even out of the garbage, and that's how we got all our furniture, with stuff like that. This right here is actually the sewing machine that I made. This was from my mother, and I made most of my clothes. Even when I was a teenager, I made a lot of my clothes because I got more clothes if I made them. My mother was happy to buy me material and I could make stuff. And I made clothes for the kids when they were little. Your dad, when he first went to kindergarten, I used to make him these overalls, and everybody called him Farmer Boy because he was in the overalls. They were really cute. This is a picture. I was saying before about how I made all the clothes for the kids and stuff like that to try to save money, and I mentioned the overalls that your dad wore to kindergarten. Well, there they are right there. That's one of the pair of overalls that I made for him when they called him Farmer Boy. And then this little outfit that Allison had, it was a pinafore and a little dress underneath, and I made different dresses and put the pinafore on top so she would have different outfits. So I made a lot of their clothes when they were little. So we had our second child, because we wanted to have children. We wanted to have a couple children. But then we thought about having another child, and we didn't. And the reason we didn't was because back then, a lot of there was something called a Malthusian philosophy, where the world was going to run out of food and people were going to starve. So we had to control the population, and in order to control the population, you should only replace yourself. So as a couple, you should only have 2 children. So we really listened to that. We thought, we'll be responsible. We'll just have 2 kids. Then years later, we kind of regretted that. We said, you know what, we really should have had another child. But we didn't because of that. So, things that they teach you and things that you're learning don't necessarily always come true. And it actually changed your life because of that, because we ended up only having 2 kids instead of 3 kids because of listening to that Malthusian philosophy. One of the interesting changes that happened during my teaching career was when I first started teaching, kids with special needs, special ed students and stuff like that were in totally separate classes, and they were never in the mainstream classes. And when I first started teaching, they started mainstreaming those children, so that I even had, for instance, in a class of kids, I would have a kid with Down syndrome who would actually be in, and included with all the other kids. And that changed a lot. Then they started having special ed classes where you could only have 6 classified kids in the class with a teacher, whereas before that they didn't give them any special help or anything like that. So I think it made a big difference in the way they educated kids. They had a better education because they got more help in the areas that they needed. They could do a lot more. And when I got to the elementary age, and working with all the child study teams and stuff like that, I found that very interesting too, because there were a lot of ways that you could help kids, that you could find to help them, even from the nursing perspective, whether it was a kid who their family couldn't afford to get glasses, and you had ways of getting someone to donate glasses to them, or getting someone's hearing checked because they couldn't afford to go to a doctor, and you could find a doctor who would volunteer their services. And so I think a lot more services for kids, including kids with handicap, in school, which never was before. When I was a kid, nobody in school had a handicap. Now all those children are allowed to go to school, and they have all the rights like other kids do. So those were some of the big changes that happened while I was a teacher. When I was teaching high school, I don't know, the kids, it changed in some eras, like in the 70s, and I wasn't teaching at that time. I didn't start teaching until the late 70s, but in the 70s, the kids had a lot of freedom in school. Like they were allowed to go out for lunch and come back and have cars and stuff like that. When I was in school, that wasn't the case. Of course, you couldn't go out, and people, there just wasn't as much freedom like that. I think the classes are a little different. So
you became a nurse after college. What made you want to do that?
After I had taught for 16 years, I was just kind of bored with that. Allison had, my youngest, had graduated from college, so I didn't have that responsibility of paying tuition anymore, and I wanted to change. So the most logical thing for me, using my background in health education, was to go into nursing. Plus, nursing is a very, very flexible field. You can go anywhere with a nursing degree. You can do many, many, many different things. So I decided to go to nursing school, and then I got my nursing degree. By the way, that was the hardest. That was harder than college. Nursing school was hard. Most of the kids flunked out. So I finished nursing school, and then I decided that I really wanted to go back into the school system because I love schools and teaching and all that stuff. So then I got a school nurse certification, and then I became a school nurse. And I went to an elementary school instead of a high school, and I loved the elementary kids. It was just a great combination. So two big parts of my entire career. You know, one side was the high school kids, and then the other side was the elementary kids, and it was great. And I loved the little kids.
Who has inspired you the most throughout your life so far?
I would have to say my grandmother. She came over from Poland when she was 16 years old, all by herself. Left her family at home, her sisters, and didn't see them again until she was an old woman. She came here by herself to stay with a cousin or something. Then she met my grandfather and got married, and they owned a little grocery store. And she had 5 children, and she worked all of her life in the store. And she was just such a loving. You just loved to go to her house, and she'd give you what they called a big squiz. You'd come in the back door and you'd get this great big hug. And I just admired her for everything that she did. And I just always picked her as the person I admire the most.
What is one of your proudest accomplishments?
I think all of those career things I told you about. You know, a lot of my other friends that haven't done so much, whether they didn't work or if they had a job, it was like a little menial thing. But I felt that I had a really important career. It was, you know, a lot to go to school while I had kids, while I was married and had kids, to try to do college at that time. And then the same thing later, going back and getting another degree. You know, so I'm proud of that. And I felt that I was good at what I did. I was a good teacher, and I was a good school nurse, and it was a very positive experience. So I think, you know, that's what I would say. Okay, so while I'm bragging, I wanted to show you my, this was my, I got Teacher of the Year one year at Summit High School. So this is my Summit High School Faculty Award in recognition of my service for Teacher of the Year. So I was very proud of that too. Here's something else I wanted to show you. I love these. In the elementary school, they have Nurses Day, and the kids they make you stuff for Nurses Day. So they made me these little posters that are just adorable. It says, thank you for putting a Band-Aid on me. Thank you for helping me when I had a tummy ache, and then they sign it. And this one I loved in particular because the 2 girls who made this one were girls of color. One was a Native Indian, an Asian Indian, and the other one, you know, was an African American. And I think it's hysterical that they colored me black. So they're so cute. They don't even realize, you know, that they're looking at somebody of a different color. It's really cute. But I love these. These are some of my favorites.
What is the most helpful advice you could give anyone at my age?
I don't know. Take your time. Try not to have too much pressure on yourself. You know, like a lot of people, like at your age, where you're thinking about, you know, college now and stuff. And a lot of people put pressure on themselves to try to know what they want to do for the rest of their life. And I don't think you have to do that. I think you can take your time, get some different experiences, see what kinds of things you like, and then sort of pick from there. And never take things too seriously. You know, always try to always be optimistic. Look on the bright side, not the bad side. Try to see the good in everything. I guess that's kind of like saying try to be happy. You know, just tell yourself you're happy all the time. You smile. Oh, this is a good day. You know, that kind of thing. Just to be positive and not to like beat up on yourself too much and that kind of thing.
Are there any regrets that you have that you wish you could take back?
No, I actually Grandpapa and I talk about this all the time. We always say that we wouldn't change anything. We wouldn't do anything differently. Everything. We feel we've been really, really lucky. Really lucky. Things have turned out great. We have 8 great grandchildren, and our kids are great, and everything is good. So I don't really have any regrets.